Pozdravljeni, moje ime je Aleš Rnecl, na moji desni je ki ni Rudolf Barešič, Rudolfa še ni, če bo prišel, ga bo vključila v kontekst oddaje, če ne bo prišel, bo pač furala po svoje, kakor pač veva in znava. Marko, hvala, da si tako hitro sprejel moje vabilo in vsaj za nekaj časa nadomestil, pa ne samo da nadomestil napovedanega gosta Rudolfa Barešiča, ker bi te tudi sicer povabil zraven in bi komot lahko bil tretji člen v celotnem streamu. Ampak hvala še enkrat.
Z veseljem.
Pred oddajo so se pogovarjali o tem, da si napisal blog o Nord Streamu, ne? O severnem toku. Pa sem ti povedal, da ga sam še nisem prebral, nažalost upam, da ga bom kmalu. Čeprav obstaja manjša verjetnost, če mi ga boš zdaj ti razložil, hecam se. Ampak vsekakor bi te pozval k temu, da meni in gledalcem malo poveš, zakaj približno gre v tem tvojem blogu.
Ja, vemo vsi, kaj se je zgodilo, ne. Vsi razen najbolj zvedenih vejo, da se je sabotiral Nord Stream. Plinovod, Nord Stream 2, bolj natančno. Več ljudi je reklo, da je nepopravljiv, oziroma da bi bili stroški tveganja preveliko, da bi se popravil. In jaz sem šel v bistvu samo delati tako malo recounting, malo tako opomnik, da je Unz Review, marsikdo od gledalcev ga verjetno pozna, da Unz Review blog je gostil žurnalista Mikea Whitneyja, ki je dal nek napovedni model, s katerim bi lahko videli ozadje ukrajinske krize. Sicer je rekel, da ukrajinska kriza se gre v Nemčiji. Osnovna teorija gre tako. Ukrajinska kriza je posledica tega, da more ZDA, da je potreben pogoj za geopolitično hegemonijo ZDA, da ohrani Rusijo in Nemčijo razdeljeno. Zato, ker če Rusija in Nemčija postaneta energetsko neodvisni in postaneta partnerici, potem kar naenkrat odpade potreba po, bomo temu rekli, NATO-vi liniji vojaških oporišč v vzhodni Evropi in v centralni Evropi, kar naenkrat odpade potreba po tem, da je dolar gold standard trgovanja in izmenjave, kar pomeni funkcionalno konec ameriške hegemonije. In zaradi tega jaz mislim, da se bo izkazalo eventualno, da je bila Amerika v zadnji za to sabotažo. Dodaten dokaz je pa še to, da se zraven še nalepil, koliko je to, ne vem, če je pol leta star klip od Bidena, kjer se hvali s tem, da jim bo gotovo bo Američanom uspelo preprečiti Nord Stream 2 v primeru, da Rusija napade Ukrajino. Čist dobesedno je napovedal potek dogajanja, ki se je zgodil. Ne.
Ja, če kot majhen intermezzo odgovorijo Robiju na tole vprašanje, kako, jaz samo težko razumem, kako lahko Lajdra von der Leyenova, kljub temu, da je Nemka, dela to Nemčiji. Ja, mi imamo tudi nekatere slovenske politike, ki to delajo v Sloveniji, ki delajo marsikaj proti slovenskega, oziroma kar vse delajo proti Sloveniji, oziroma pač delajo mimo kakršnega koli premisleka o slovenskih interesih. Zadnjič sem imel space z Pridomno Gorenško in on mi je govoril o tem, ker smo teoretizirali o tem, da je boljše, da imaš na javnih položajih ljudi svojega rodu kot tujce, da je manj verjetnosti, da te izdajo, da se kompromitirajo in tako dalje. On je temu nasproti postavljal tezo oziroma trditev, da je veliko Slovencev v državnem zboru in v Evropskem parlamentu, ki delajo proti slovensko, ne, da je ravno zdajšnja garnitura slovenskih politikov dokaz, da temu ni tako. Ne. Ampak nasproti temu sem mu dal primer Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein zveni nemško, pa vsi vemo, da ni Nemec, da je Žid. Ne? Torej, slovenski priimki slovenskih politikov niso zagotovilo za to, da so to dejansko Slovenci. Lahko imajo priimke, lahko imajo imena, ki zvenijo slovensko, pa to niso nujno Slovenci. Podobno velja za von der Leyenovo, da navkljub temu, da to zveni nemško ali pa nizozemsko, meni bolj zveni nizozemsko, ali kakorkoli, ne? Da je to kakršnakoli Nemka. Poleg tega pa tale hipoteza o židovskem problemu je po moje nujno treba razširiti na hipotezo o problemu evropske aristokracije in židovskega denarja. Von der Leyenova, če ni sama Židinja, zagotovo pripada nekakšni evropski aristokraciji. In ta aristokracija je po mojem mnenju korumpirana ali pa zaslužna pod narekovaji za naše današnje probleme na podoben način, pa prav tako ali pa vsaj 50% v relaciji do židovskega denarja. Ne. Se pravi, niso samo Židje, ampak je tudi korumpirana izdajalska evropska aristokracija, kateri pripada tudi von der Leyenova. Kakšno je tvoje mnenje o tem, Marko?
Medtem, ko si govoril, sem šel na hiter citat od svetega Tomaža Akvinskega pobrati in gre takole. Bom najprej po angleško, pa ne vem, kdor ne razume, lahko morda na hiter prevedemo, kakorkoli. If foreigners were allowed to meddle with the affairs of a nation as soon as they arrive, many dangers might occur, since the foreigners, not yet having the common good firmly at heart, might strive for certain goals in opposition to the people. S čemer on misli, the people zanga ni ne raja, ne narod, to, kar si ti rekel, narod v srbo-hrvaškem smislu, zanga je to, njemu je to jasno iz naravnega prava, da je to genetsko povezana nacija. Ne? Tako lahko dam sem for reference, če ima kdo dvome o svetem Tomažu. Ampak ja, mislim, To ni noben argument, če je slovenska garnitura za nič ali karkoli. To ni noben argument, prvič, zato ker mehanizem govori, da bi morali biti obratno. Ne? Mislim, prvič, narava mehanizma govori, logika nam govori, zdrava pamet nam govori, da bo nekdo za svoje ljudi boljš poskrbel kot za tuje ljudi. Okay? Prvič. Drugič, če je incidenca primerov slovenskih politikov, ki so slabi, mislim, prevelika, je incidenca tujih politikov, ki slabo dela za Slovenijo, megalomansko večja, tako da se o tem sploh ne bomo pogovarjali, po moje. Drugo je pa to, mislim, kaj je skupno vsem tem slovenskim politikom, ki delajo proti slovenska dejanja, tuj denar, tuje veze. Mislim, Janša ima ta zamik, bomo rekli, ta shift v obnašanju, meni se zdi očiten, da je izrazito pod tujim denarjem in vplivom. Pač, da je dobil, bomo temu rekli, vstopnico v mednarodno konzervativno skupnost. Ne? Zato, ker je bil v nevarnosti, da ga bojo porinali v mednarodno zavrženo far-right skupnost, ne? In je hiter, dokler je se še dal ujel zadnji vlak v konzervativno gibanje. In ja, mislim, Amerika bi mogla biti več kot zadosten dokaz, mislim, kaj pomeni imeti tuje voditelje dejansko. Pa ne govorimo samo o D skupini. Ne govorimo samo o Židih. Ne? Lahko govorimo o Aleksandri Ocasio, lahko govorimo o Rašidi Tlaib, lahko govorimo o Ilhan Omar, vsem je skupno eno in isto. In tudi ti, bi rekli Američani, tudi ti so vsi, ki delajo avtentično, oziroma delajo za avtentično korist Američanov, WASP. Vsi so WASPi.
Ja,
To mora vse povedati, po moje.
Se strinjam s tabo, v zadnjem času sem nas je nekaj Slovencev gostovalo v nekih srbskih spacih, da treba postaviti pod 3 oklepaje, ne samo da so srbsko-židovski, ampak ker ne vemo, če so res avtentično srbski, karkoli bi že to bilo, ne. Recimo, da bi to bilo, ne vem, ljudje, ki so pravoslavci in jim je mar za srbski rod, to bi recimo bil Srb, po moje, ne. Verjetno bi se ti z mano strinjal, ne vem, ali bi mi oporekal temu.
Ne.
Recimo, da je Srb torej nekdo, ki je pravoslavec in mu je mar za srbski rod, prideš pa v te tako imenovane srbske spese in tam ljudje brez kakršnega koli problema kritizirajo tako imenovani srbski šovinizem, ne. Govorijo o tem, ja, nacionalizem sicer, ja, ampak ne pa šovinizem, kadar se govori o napetostih med Srbi in kosovskimi Albanci, naprimer na Kosovu, ne. Ker so tako pač naučeni. Se pravi, hipoteza tukaj razlaga tega, zakaj, in potem jim recimo podtakneš hipotezo o tem, kdo so bili komunisti, ne. Da so bili, vsaj kar se tiče Sovjetske zveze, zagotovo 90% židovskega rodu, ne. Za Jugoslavijo pa samo domnevamo, da je bilo kaj takega ali kaj podobnega, ne. Ampak kakorkoli, ko jim to hipotezo podtakneš, se začnejo boriti proti tebi, češ, da ne želijo sodelovati v debati, kjer se en narod slika z enim čopičem, ne. In potem jim rečeš, prej pa niste imeli problema slikati svojega lastnega naroda z enim čopičem, ne? Ali pa nemškega naroda z enim čopičem. Nobenega problema niste imeli kritizirati šovinizem, tako imenovani šovinizem Nemcev na eni strani, šovinizem Srbov na drugi strani. Ko smo pa omenili šovinizem Židov, pa ste začeli kričati, kaj je lahko razlaga tega. Je po mojem mnenju, ti sami so Židje, ali pa imajo mindset, ki dela za Žide. Se pravi, ko rečem, da dela za Žide, je to, da če ga tvoj rod ima, potem ga je možno zlahka usmerjati proti židovskim interesom, ne? Ne proti slovenskim, v našem primeru, ne proti srbskem primeru, ne proti nemškem primeru, ampak proti, se pravi, imaš svoje ljudi, ki imajo tak mindset ponotranjen, da delajo za nek drug rod namesto za svojega. Pri tem pa včasih tudi delajo proti svojemu rodu, ne?
A veš, eni temu pravijo pranje možganov, ampak jaz temu rajš pravim mentalna kastracija. Mislim,
Ja.
Ampak ja, to je, vse vemo na podlagi česa je. Na podlagi guilt tripanja zaradi rolerskega incidenta, ali pa incidenta piškotopeke, in ja, moramo biti spletnemu očesu prijazni, lej. In to se uporablja zadnjih 70 let, vse smo videli. Mislim, zato ker je že instinktivno uporabljajo to, kakor instinktivna reakcija je na kakršnokoli kritiko, ne. Enako kot je pri feminizmu, ne, ker jedro feminizma, bistvo feminizma je v bistvu, da ne emancipacija, ne nadvlada, ne karkoli, ne. Bistvo feminizma je, da nikoli pod nobenim pogojem, v nobeni situaciji, zaradi nobenega razloga ne smeš kaj slabega reči o ženski. In bistvo antisemitizma je, da nikoli v nobeni situaciji z nobenim razlogom ne smeš nič reči negativnega o majhni kapci. Ne.
Ja, in v bistvu nič druga.
Mi se
Zelo
to
lepo
gremo,
si
ker smo
razložil tudi
mentalno
roge.
kastrirani. Mi se to gremo, ker smo mentalno kastrirani. To je to.
Ja,
In
recimo, kot si rekel, izvoli.
Eugipius je dobro rekel, ne? Eugipius na Twitterju, enega poznate, je dobro rekel. Nobena situacija se ne bo razrešila, noben filozofski, politični, tudi ideološki napredek se ne bo zgodil, dokler ne bojo določene figure baobabov iz 20. stoletja lahko bile obravnavane enako, bomo rekli, karkoli že to pomeni, ampak enako bomo, izrazi mi manjka, ampak enako nepristransko, recimo, kolikor je to res za to drugo figuro. Ampak nekatere figure iz 20. stoletja, baobabi, bojo morali biti obravnavane tako, brez čustev, kot še en Martin Luther, kot še en Caligula, kot še en whatever, Mark Aureli, kolikor že gledate na nje. Ne? Ampak ja.
Ja, tole se mi zdi izjemno pomembno komentirati, ker je Kuba ravno presečišče skupnega delovanja komunistov in liberalcev pod krinko socializmom in kapitalizmom. Ti, Marko, me zagotovo razumeš, kaj imam v mislih, ne? Ker tukaj piše Jož Polc, da se Fidel Castro vrača v grobu zaradi amerikanizacije in LGBT pranja možganov Kube, ne? Ker je tajla ideja, da so starokomunisti so še bili konzervativni in tradicionalisti, ne? Kakor je bil tudi Fidel Castro, in da kot so pri nas v Jugoslaviji ekskomunisti gledali na homoseksualnost kot na eksces kapitalizma, da so tudi starokomunisti na Kubi gledali na tak način, ne? In da je pa to izrazito in samo stvar kapitalizma, ne? To je samo eksces kapitalizma, kakor ne bi bilo neomarksizma, ne? Čeprav bi nekdo lahko rekel, da je neomarksizem izum CIA-ja in do neke mere neomarksizem, če k neomarksizmu prištevamo tudi poststrukturalizem, je izum CIA-ja, ne? In lahko rečemo pa, oziroma špekuliramo o tem, da je frankfurtska šola, ki je pobegnila v ZDA, sodelovala s CIA-jem pri pranju možganov ljudi izza Varšavskega pakta, izza železne zavese, oziroma tudi v Jugoslaviji, ki ni bila pod tem paktom, ampak je bila del nekih neuvrščenih, kakorkoli že. Kako ti gledaš na tole zadevo? Saj ni tako, kot da recimo nek Fidel Castro ni bil hedonist, ženskar, materialist in tako dalje. In od hedonizma, materializma je, če tudi si sovražnik homoseksualizma, ker tale mačizem se povezuje tudi z antihomoseksualizmom, se pravi, če si pravi ded, po domače povedano, fukaš babe, pa sovražiš vedre, ne? To je ta neka nocija, ne? Ampak resnici na ljubo je zelo tanka meja med hedonizmom in materializmom in LGBT ideologijo, ali ni? Tvoje mnenje?
Ja, seveda. Fidel Castro se obrača v grobu. A bi se vi obračali v grobu, če bi umrl, pa bi pol vaš otrok zrastel, pa maturiral, pa naredil diplomo, pa doktorat? Mislim, da ne. In zato se tudi Fidel Castro ne obrača v grobu. Zato, ker je pač, jaz mislim, da je bil on eno dovolj komitanih revolucionarjev, ki bi uvidel naslednjo fazo revolucije. Ne? Zato, ker imamo revolucionarje, ki niso uvideli naslednje faze revolucije in so ostali ironično zavezani tradicionalni revoluciji, ne? In tukaj se najbolj pokaže da revolucija žre svoje otroke, ker jih res je požrla. Ne? Naprimer, en tipičen primer, Roman Vodeb. To sem že omenil enkrat. Roman Vodeb je tipičen primer. Ja, res. On ima izpade, zato ker, razumeš, paradigma sveta, ki jo on promulgira, je Freud. Na kakšni podlagi lahko on, naprimer, kritizira tiste gejevske risbice ali karkoli? Razumeš? Ne more. Kako, dragi Roman Vodeb, kako se bojo otrokom, ki so trans, ali pa otrokom, ki so gej, kako bomo preprečili nastajanje represiranih otroških travm, če ne tako, da jih pustimo pedofilom, da jih posilijo? Mislim, da pač on recimo ni videl naslednje faze revolucije, ne? In zdaj je samo tam ena, kako bi rekel, nekdo, ki mu konstantno ironično freudovski slipi ven letijo, pa mislim, cel njegov Twitter appearance je en velik freudovski slip, iskreno. Ampak, kakorkoli. Ja, ne.
Jaz sem ga želel omeniti, če venem, prosti, dokončaj mislim.
Kar si ti govoril o frankfurtski šoli in CIA, je to, da smo pač, in tako je treba prepoznati, da to, če mora Vox zdaj prav War West, kakor je rekel, če je skrbdal besedo werewolf, pa pač the West, ne? Se pravi, kako bi temu rekel po slovensko, ne vem kaj, kvazi modo zahod, ne? Kvazi zahod, ali pa pač pač zombi zahod, bi lahko rekel. Evo, zombi zahod, imamo nov izraz, zombi zahod. Mi smo naslednja faza revolucije in mi smo tisti, ki nosimo baklo marksizma naprej. Ne pa tiste države, ki se imenujejo socialistične in komunistične. Ker je dejstvo. Kako to vidite? Ja, da je funkcionalno delovanje Rusije, Kitajske v svetu reakcionarno, ne revolucionarno, je reakcionarno. Medtem ko je naše delovanje konstantno revolucionarno. Ravno kar smo začeli novo varno revolucijo v Iranu.
Ja. Mi, ki smo zadaj za tem NATO-om, za katerim se skriva judeo-ameriška civilizacija, konstantno povzročamo revolucije na Bližnjem vzhodu in v Južni Ameriki. Res je. To sem te mislil, Romana Vodeba, sem mislil še v nekem drugem primeru omeniti, ne? In v tem primeru kritizirati tudi tako imenovano slovensko desnico, pa to je vse pozavi tudi s primci, aleši in s temi shodi za naše otroke in za proti LGBT učenju v šolah in tako dalje in tako dalje. Najprej omenimo tole, kar se tiče Vodeba in Dežmana. Ne? Vodeb žaljivo Dežmanu pravi, da je nekrofilski kopač kosti ali nekaj takega, ne? Ker kopa te, ker odkopava te grobnice, naravne grobnice, v katere so vrgli v povojnih pobojih domobrance in bog ve koga vse še, ne. Se pravi, govorimo o povojnih pobojih in Roman Vodeb se tako cinično izraža do Dežmana, da je nekrofil zaradi tega. Prepričan sem in zato sem tudi napisal prej, pa nisem bil prvi, nekdo drug je prej napisal še nekaj podobnega, da si Vodeb ne upa istega očitati Židom, ko jočejo o holokaustu, ne. 100%, ampak ko mi to napišemo, se pravi suverenisti, kako nas hočeš imenovati, ne, se pa tudi Dežman ne bo postavil na našo stran, ker ga moti, ker smo omenili Žide in na nek način ali pa vse do neke mere tudi v tem kontekstu razkrili njihovo involviranost, njihovo dvoličnost, njihovo hipokrizijo. Ne. Dežmana moti na podoben način, ko moti Vodeba, če Žide in holokaust. Čeprav si v tem smislu vzel v bran Dežmana, ki ga Roman Vodeb žali s tem, da je nekrofil, Bran si ga pa vzel na tak način, da si pokazal na jasno dvoličnost Židov in Žida, kar Roman Vodeb skoraj zagotovo je, s svojim navdušenjem nad Freudom in njegovim hipermačizmom oziroma hiperheteroseksualnostjo. In tudi v tem smislu je on komunist, ki ni dojel, da je revolucija šla dalje. Ne? On je še bral tistega, ki je opeval heteroseksualni mačizem, večina ostalih je pa že šla dalje. Ne? In Vodeb je še vedno tam in se buni in se krega in zdaj že prisega na Janšo, ker se čuti, da je edini, ki ga je vzel pod okrilje s svojim starokopitnim revolucionarizmom. Ne? Ja.
Tukaj si zgrešil eno zelo očitno razliko. Namreč, zakaj v enem primeru lahko obtožiš nekrofilijo, v drugem pa ne? Dal neprimeren komentar. Namreč, od domobrancev so ostale kosti, od drugih pa sam papel. Tako da, to ful ni bilo smešno, ampak ne.
Ne vem, če se...
Pač, ko sem bil jaz v 5. razredu pri slovenščini, se spomnim, da smo slučajno zabredali nek pogovor s profesorico, z učiteljico in itak sem vedel, da je bila rdeča in tako. Ampak ena stvar, ki je nisem pričakoval, je bila to, da ko sem jaz rekel, in pogovarjali smo se o predsedniških volitvah, takrat je bilo to Pahor proti Türku. In čeprav jaz nisem maral nobenega, sem mi pa rekel nekaj, ki se mi je zdel ful brihten, no. Ampak, ja, rekel sem, ampak to je bilo pa res neokusno, da je rekel, da so povojni poboji drugorazredna tema. To sem ji rekel. In kaj je rekla? Ja, sej res, neh pustijo tam primer, da ležijo tam not. Kaj pa je skupajo, bla, 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 ne vem, glavnem. Ja, mislim, to je, ko se temu reče, odličen primer, pač to je out of touch, ne vem, kaj ne rečem, pač si njem kaj drugega reči. Zame še kar osebno, zato ker vem, da en moj stric tam not leži, moj prastric tam not leži in zelo malo manjka, da bi tudi moj dedek tam not ležal. Tako da, ne vem, take stvari mi res ne dajo želje, da bi še kdaj slišal karkoli od Vodeba, ja.
Dajva malo tega primca, Aleš, obdelati in današnji protest, ne, ki je jasno, da je organiziran strani SDS-a, NSI-a in tako dalje. Ne. Tukaj Aleš Primc pravi: hvala, 10 000 navdušenih ljudi na velikem družinskem shodu in pohodu za zaščito družin, se lahko v bistvu tudi dava to na share. Share screen. Zavihek Primca. Ok. Tukaj imamo tole, ne? Vse lepo in prav, oni so proti LGBT ideologiji, oni čuvajo naše otroke in tako dalje, ne? Ampak, kot je dobro komentiral Matjaž Planinšec, ne? Samo malo, da najdem njegov tweet, samo trenutek. Tweet. Shod, ki v svoji biti ponuja pozitivne zaključke, le nikakor na vazelinski desni nočejo ali ne zmorejo sami sebi priznati, da se sodomistična ideologija vsiljuje prav iz EU in njenih institucij, zavita v posladkani sinonim demokracije. Tukaj bi dodal k evropskim institucijam tudi atlanticistične institucije, kar je širši pojem. Ne? In to je res SDS in NSI sta na eni strani zavezana atlanticizmu. Atlanticizem pa je tisti, ne naši lokalni komunisti, niso Kučan in Golobič in podobni, mogoče so izvajalci ukazov iz Tel Aviva in Washingtona, ne? ampak na vse zadnje so atlanticistične institucije tiste, ki tole prinašajo. Ne? Kadarkoli se neka država skuša priključiti Evropski uniji, jo prvo opomnijo, da mora urediti pravice istospolnih, k čemur se prištevajo tudi posvojitve in poroke in podobne nebuloze, ne? Proti čemur se je domnevno danes protestiralo in proti čemur se domnevno Aleš Primc in Falanga borijo. Vehementno trdijo, da je atlanticizem boljši od Rusije. Pazite, jaz ne trdim, da je Rusija boljša od atlanticizma. Potem bi še malo omenil Dugina, v povezavi s tistim, kar si ti prej govoril, ampak pustimo zdaj to za enkrat ob strani. Ampak ne trdim, da je Rusija boljša, ampak oni vehementno trdijo, da je atlanticizem boljši, obenem pa protestirajo proti temu, kar atlanticizem prinaša. Tvoj komentar?
Ena beseda. Open Society Foundation. Ne? Mislim, da bi morali to vse pojasniti. In ja, ne vem, Evropa, Amerika, prvič je presladek denar, predobre karierne priložnosti. Mislim, sam pogledajte, ne? Jaz sem zadnjič enega, ko bi temu rekel, evropolitika srečal, ne? Mislim, ti ljudje ne delajo nič. Ti ljudje ne delajo nič, pa so plačani tisoče in tisoče evrov. Neizvoljeni. Ne? Mislim, po eni strani je to idealna karijera. Ja, saj ni kaj drugega za reči. Mislim, v Sloveniji pač smo kar neka taka mehna kletka, ali karkoli, mehna tam koral, kjer pač nas Evropa gleda, kako imamo mi tam svoj rodeo. Itak je čisti kaos, noben ne more prevzeti kontrole, edina stvar, kar se dogaja, je konstantna erozija, ki jo lahko med tem izvajajo organizacije, kot so Open Society Foundation. Ne. In pač, kolikor podpiram idejo protesta proti, ne idejo, tudi izvedbo protesta proti whatever stvari, vsako zgrešeno stvar se da izkoristiti za dobro, seveda znotraj razumnih meja. Je pač tako, da to bo zmeraj samo zdravelj simptom ali pa v najboljšem primeru ali pa v najslabšem primeru je samo virtue signaling in kazanje. Ne. Evo, se umikam.
Rudolf?
Da, tu sam ja, izvini da sam zakasnija, nikako ni išlo z ovim, nisam ima connection, nikako da ide naprijed, izvinim. So sorry about that.
Ni problema. Koliko ti razumeš slovensko? To mi povej.
Jako malo, ne razumiem dobro slovenski, žao mi je.
Dobro, kaj ti predlagaš, da se mi dva, ko govoriva stava ali pa ti postavljava vprašanja, lomiva v hrvaščini ali v angleščini? Kaj je boljše?
Meni bi najlakše bilo da pričamo na engleski, ko ide za vas dvojica.
Ok, Marko, ti je to ok?
V redu, ampak to je zmaga za anglosaksonske tirane, že spet. Spet so nas, spet.
Najbolje bi bilo na hrvatski, ali vidiš, ja ne razumiem baš slovenski, tako.
Jaz se bom prilagodil, drugače. Meni je v redu, če malo vmem tolčemo, pa se lomo, ampak lahko tudi po angliško. Bom požaril to.
Možemo da miješamo malo, da ide.
So,
dobro. Yeah.
Eternal Anglo wins again. Ampak da ne bi zmagal Eternal Anglo, ćemo pričati na hrvatskom i uz to ću rizikovati ili riskirati da me slovenski nacionaliste kritiziraju zbog čega ja pričam hrvatski. Dakle, ništa, šalu na stran, ajde idemo engleski. So Rudolf, thanks for coming. Thanks for accepting my invitation. I'd really love for you to introduce yourself to Slovene audience, to our audience, and to ourselves a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. Well, where can I start? I'm a Croatian patriot living in Sweden, where I was born and raised. My parents migrated here to avoid the prosecution in Yugoslavia because we were always Croat patriots and totally against the Yugoslavian state. So I was born and raised in Sweden, and I'm basically a European nationalist, you might say. I'm an ethno-nationalist primarily, and I'm very critical of, let's say, these ties of globalization and the new world order. That's basically, yeah.
We are in the same. Are we in the same group with Nordlux on
Yes.
Telegram? Probably. Someone from the Croat ethno-nationalist said something like that Tomislav Sunic is a boomer in the sense that although he's also he calls himself a white nationalist, probably. Would you say that Tom Sunic is a boomer in this sense that he calls himself a white nationalist and not a Croatian ethno-nationalist or something like that?
That's a very good question. I have some remarks about this man. I have actually met him a few years ago, and he is I would say that he is a pan-European. He focuses on pan-Europeanism, and he is very concerned about the Indo-European people, and the way I see him, he is not a Croatian ethno-nationalist. That's my view, and I find him quite ambivalent, to be honest with you, because some things that he says is quite good, and something is just I just don't see it as realistic the way Sunic has elaborated on let's say world politics and and nationalism and so on. So I see him focusing on pan-Europeanism primarily. Yes, that's correct.
By pan-Europeanism, you mean interpreting the states of affairs in the world in the manner that the struggle is of all the European nations combined against someone, for example, globalist?
Yes.
Or do you mean something else by that?
No, that's very good. I mean basically like this. For instance, if you look at the cleavages that we had between the Orthodox civilization and the Western civilization and so on, he wants to bridge it over, and he sees as totally that we belong to the same civilization and that there are no differences. Even if there are minor differences, we have to leave this myopic nationalism aside, and we need to focus on the broader image, what will happen next for the European peoples in general. And I think, of course, it's kind of the way I see it. It's it is ideal, I would say, but it is quite simplistic as well, because we need to take into consideration that we have subdivisions within our civilization, and there is definitely a cleavage between the Orthodox East and the West. We see it now, especially being materialized on the battlefield in Ukraine and so on. So, yeah, and then that's one issue.
But wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I agree that there are differences between Orthodox Europe and Catholic Europe. Of course, there are differences also amongst the Catholics also. But wouldn't you also say that there are greater differences between Catholics and Protestants combined with Jews? Which is basically what is behind the Atlanticism, which is an alternative to Orthodox and Catholic Christians making some sort of combined arrangements. I'm not saying that there's not a third alternative. It probably is, and I would hope so. But yeah, there.
Sure. Well, yes, of course, I agree. What you just said here, and of course, if you look at, there are naturally more subcategories within our civilization as well. But I think the way I see it in Sunni's sense that you wanted to ask me is, I just don't see him as a Croat patriot whatsoever. I see him somehow, championing for European rights and so on, which I do agree 100%. I think is very important. However, when it comes to the issues and so on facing Croatia and so on, I am, because we have an imminent threat, I would say, what will happen in case Serbia becomes stronger again. I don't think that this conflict is resolved whatsoever. We saw conflict erupt again between, for instance, the Ukrainians and the Russians, and I think if given a chance, we will have problems with Serbia, definitely. I think this will happen. It's not completely over. And he wants to bridge those differences, and he wants to unite radical Chetniks with Croat patriots. I think it's just stupid to do so. That's my opinion. I don't have any respect for Serbian nationalists whatsoever. I don't like them. I don't want to have anything to do with them. I think they are just pawns, for Israel, and I just don't see them do anything good whatsoever. And furthermore, there are Sivnets, very loyal to international Judaism and so on. They always depict Catholics as the main crooks in history. They would never utter that there is a bigger problem with the international Jewry, and that's the biggest problem that I have with so-called Serbian nationalists. Yeah, that would be my view.
Yeah. Okay. I have connections to some Serbian ethno-nationalists that would consider themselves as a part of a broader European civilization. They would be critical towards Jewry and so forth. So it might be that there's a problem of too many brands of ethno-nationalisms that have come to life lately. So it's really important for me to have these discussions, so to at least to create a map of brands of ethno-nationalism that we have in Europe at least. What I wanted to ask you, this is a minor. Sorry, Marco, I'll give you. Do you have any questions?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, a minor sub-discourse about the term patriotism. It seems that it is a term that comes from America. This is what I problematized lately in Slovenian discourses amongst the so-called mainstream right or conservatives or so forth, because similarly to Croatian mainstream politics, where the HDZ people would probably also call themselves Croatian patriots or something like that. So I problematize this term, by which it cannot be meant sincerely, and by it something else that the mainstream conservatives mean by it. But for example, Slovene mainstream right, which says there's NSC, which is Janša, and so forth and so forth, they'd be calling themselves patriots, but deny that they are nationalists. So they'd be explicitly calling themselves patriots, but not nationalists. So
Sure.
It seems that there's some sort of discrepancy, at least in mainstream discourses, between patriotism and nationalism. It seems that the so-called right-wingers or conservatives think that nationalism is something bad and patriotism is something okay. And when you push them, you see that they're not, that they're really not ethno-nationalists, that they hate ethno-nationalism, for example.
Sure.
They go to mountains which are symbolic.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, but I think also with Sunich, for instance, when this conflict erupted between the Ukrainians and I can only speak also what happened in Sweden. In Sweden, for instance, we have the Nordic resistance movement, which is a ethno-nationalistic, somehow post, I would say, national socialist. I think this is the biggest branch in the Nordic countries. And when this war erupted between Russia and Ukraine, all of them basically, allied behind Russia and supported Russia 100%. And I don't know, I listened to Sunich and he remains somehow neutral about this, but within this new dissident, this new right, we see it in the US and everywhere, basically people are rallying behind the Russians in this conflict. And this is for me totally bizarre. And because as a
Croat patriot, is it really bizarre?
No, but I understand.
I know that you're you're Croat.
For instance, I mean, for just if I give you my understanding from this view, I mean, it's a paradigmatic conflict like we Croats went through when these Krajina Serbs, they wanted to break away. It's paradigmatic to what happened in the Donbas region, Donetsk and Luhansk. And all of a sudden they wanted to break away from it. And then Yugoslavia started attacking us and so on. And we managed somehow to liberate ourselves.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But it's the same. It's the same as the Russian. Okay, it's not. I know what you mean. You mean that Ukraine is as Croatia and Krajina right now. But is it really? Is it really? But and at the end, it's all about it's all about the will to power and the force to succeed. It isn't it? You succeeded in your war against the Serbs via your Krajina interests, for example.
Oh yeah. No, but that's true. Yeah. We actually managed to cripple the fourth largest army in Europe single-handedly. This is even admitted between both Russians. I usually use this example. Both Russians and Montenegrins. They usually tell jokes about that Croatia single-handedly beat the Serbs, and actually we did. We crippled totally the Yugoslav army. If it weren't for the fierce fighting that we put out in Vukovar, probably Yugoslavia would have never broken into pieces if it weren't for that. So yeah, and I understand what you're saying. It is a little bit different in the sense that the entire world mobilized, rallied around, for instance, Ukrainian in their support and so on. And for us, it took much longer before we got international support. If I understand it correctly, it was not before 93, 94 when we started to having international support for our cause, and we sacrificed many people for this. But what I wanted to, and I understand your point of view too, but for me it was a little bit shocking that you have, for instance, white nationalists supporting a Euro-Asianist notion of Russian expansionism. that is also somehow influenced by the tentacles of Zog, because it is not going against the international jury either. So the way I see it is a tragedy, this conflict, because we see Jewish interest heavily invested in both sides of this conflict. So, I mean, I just see it as I cannot support Russians either. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Can I pause something here?
No problem. Yeah, of course.
I want to say something regarding why are people rallying behind Russia? I completely agree that it's bizarre that we would that out of a contrarianism, people in the West or Europeans are starting to support Russia just to spite our American overlords or something. But that's actually the only reason. If you look at it from that perspective, I don't think it's that bizarre. Actually, it comes, I think, from a simple contrarianism to, let's say, the New World Order or the rules-based world order. And we're just finding the next biggest dog in the arena that can maybe defend us from that. But I think it's important to stay aware that maybe we have a common interest with Eurasia in defeating let's say, the American neocons and their Jewish overlords. But we have to stay aware that the interests of the Russian people are not equal to the interests either of the Eurozone, let's say, or any particular European nation.
I think what you said is very good. I just want to point out, so people don't get me wrong on this stream, just because this is very important. Now, I believe that dilemma in all of this is, what kind of Russia do we want to see? For instance, let me just say it, I'm very sympathetic to the ethno-nationalists in Russia. I think they have done, previously they have done a good job, but they are very stifled, heavily oppression. Secondly, also, for instance, this notion of Eurasianism, I just see it as an alternative globalist conception, which is based on the Sino-Russian alliance. And I just don't see China and Russia being any way better than this hegemony that we are experiencing from Washington. So I am, to be honest with you, both against Washington and Beijing and Moscow too, what they want to. So, and I see it, the best thing in this geopolitical situation would be for us to focus much more on regionalism. And I have explained this in previous, with, for instance, the visa countries, with Poland, with Czech Republic, and so on. And I think the biggest problem, the way I see it, is that Germany is just reduced to an economic engine. It is not a powerful political entity that it should be, because then I would say that this would be solution, that the third time Germany really succeed in becoming a regional hegemon. I think that would be the best solution for me if I had to choose. But now it's not much to choose, because you have, like you said, go ahead.
There's also something else. It was something about what Marcos said before you came about the article on UN's review. It was about the Germany and the fact that the global hegemons are basically all about stopping the alliance between Russia and Germany. So the alliance between Russia and Germany, that would also include the whole Europe, for example, that would be the fourth alternative, which would basically mean that Duginism and Eurasianism for Russia goes away, and you give the Russians another ideology. It is, you're a part of Europe, combined with Germany and all the other European nations and so forth. The ideal scenario for me would be Russia, Germany, and the whole Europe combined then you don't have Eurasianism and you don't have Atlanticism, or at least they are not so strong at all. And it basically makes a lot of sense that the main goal, if, for example, Putin works with globalists and so forth, and Dugin is another type of Duginism is another type of globalism, is that these people are against their own, that their first and the main goal is to stop the alliance between Russia and Germany, and by that the whole Europe as it should be. This would be, in my opinion, the fourth option. If it's realistic, I'm not sure. It probably isn't, at least now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand you. The only thing that I want to say is that the type of, let's say, an expansionist Russia that we are experiencing now, or rather that wants to, let's say, fight against Western interests within its square. Let's put it this way. I think that the only way I can see this happening is that it strengthen its alliance with China. And if it strengthen with its alliance with China, we will have an alternative, let's say, alternative political order that will not benefit the European people. Let's say if China succeeds and becomes an economic superpower, then Europe is dead, in my view, because I don't see the rise of China helping us whatsoever. Furthermore, I want to tell you this. What I have noticed the last, let's say, 15, 20 years, when I have communicated with the Russians, I see a lot of mixed marriages between Chinos and Russians, especially Chinese men and marrying a young Russian girl. And we see what kind of a catastrophe that can bring for the Russian population as well if this mess continues. I'm not saying that we are immune to this. I say we have just as big mess here, let's say, in the Western European countries. I'm not saying that, but I think that if one superpower is replaced by another, for instance, China manages to replace the United States, I don't think automatically that our interests will become much, much better. However, if somehow Russia would detach itself from China and align itself towards Europe, I think that would be a better option. However, if that would happen, the Russians would have to, let's say, they would have to phase out this aspiration of a greater Russian empire, because it just cannot function without the Chinese. So that's my view on this geopolitical situation, I would say.
Here's a question, Rudolf. Do you think that the BRICS here appeals to multilateralism and a more fair and balanced world order are fake or insincere?
You mean what the BRICS countries together, how they would like to outmaneuver the petrodollar, you mean, or?
Sure, and simultaneously, China and Russia are constantly appealing to some sense of morality in terms of a multilateral world order.
Yes,
they're basically saying that when we get in power, there will be no functional hegemony. There will be a fair world order where everyone is appreciated. I mean, I'm just curious what you think about this kind of things.
I think it's a very good question. I think like they would have shared distribution of power, like you said, in case they would be able to outmaneuver the petrodollar. Well, it sounds very good. However, I believe that this is definitely a consequence that in the past, let's say for the last 15, 20 years, we had this unipolar power configuration. You have the United States with Washington on top, and the rest, they did not have much to say. And now we are slowly entering this multipolar phase when we have more regional powers competing for influence and so on, and the United States is slowly losing its power, albeit they are still very powerful in the sense, not least when it comes to the popular culture and the commercialism in general and so on. So I would say that. So I understand it, if that they need to ally and somehow outmaneuver the US, if it will be a shared distribution of power, that's very difficult to say, because we have not experienced how a hegemonistic China will behave. It's very unpredictable. I don't know really, but I see it.
Some would argue, for example, Vox Day, if you're familiar, he argues that it is in kind of the nature of the Chinese nation that they're anti-imperialistic, that they're fundamentally conservative when they're ruling over someone. That they kind of, in the interest of playing the long game, of preserving their rule and power for as long as possible, they don't try to burn it all at once in a sort of just all-out imperialism, but they just take advantage in such a way that allows them to remain in power for a longer time, which would in turn benefit us, for example. What do you think about that?
Sure. Well, the way I have seen it, for instance, they have, if you study their policies in Africa and so on, they are heavily invested in that continent and so on. And what usually I hear different stories. Some say that they're more benevolent in regards to European colonialism in that sense. So that might be the case. I see it very difficult, because who knows when they reach that amount of power how they actually will behave. And furthermore, I would like to say that depending on, I think perhaps that we will see a highly militaristic and expansionist China in the near future, I would say. And I think that this will start maybe with the controlling of Taiwan. Maybe I think there we will see the first conflict, and maybe perhaps territorial conflict with Japan might be possible. We saw also the conflict that they had in Himalaya with India. So I'm not so sure. I think they have translated their economic means to military means, because we see the military expenditure. We see they are actually expanding, I would say. I just don't see that they will become more benevolent in the future, but I might be wrong on this sense. But yeah.
Can I ask you something, guys? I really want to know your opinion on this. Did you see the dispute between Jordan Peterson, who's obviously a Lolbertarian and a boomer, but and that British journalist, can you help me? Piers Morgan, yeah, and they argued about totalitarianism, and Peterson cited someone that said that for to have a totalitarianism, you have to have everyone lying all the time, everybody lying all the time. And it seems to me that what caused the contrarianism by many dissident right-thinking people against this empire, Judeo-American, whatever you call it, is exactly the fact that we probably do live in a perfect totalitarian empire, in the sense that it is an empire in which everybody lies all the time, and the dissident right is basically the intellectual force that hates this, that's against this, and this is what created this anti sentiment against the empire we live in. Wouldn't you say so?
Well, I mean, it's the way I see it is so what's the morale of the story? The morale of the story is that basically the Western civilization, the Western empire now, let's say manifested by the United States, is the worst of the worst due to the fact that all of the pack of lies are accumulated together. Or what would be the morale of the story? So we get your take first.
The moral of the story would be that we're sick and tired of being lied to, being manipulated, and being lied to as if we had IQs under 80. It seems
But
that,
I understand.
of course,
but what's
there's
the
Russian
alternative?
propaganda. There's a lot of propaganda, but at least when a Russian does edge up towards you, he does it with respect, as if you had at least 100 of IQ. And the NATO or CIA or Judeo-American propaganda is for retards, basically. And if you're semi-intelligent, you get mad. Don't lie to me as if I were an idiot.
Hey, I think Jordan Peterson confused the requirement for a totalitarian regime with the necessary outcome of democracy. So, and maybe coincidentally, he proved the point that every democracy ends in a tyranny.
Yeah.
As
it
in
could be.
Everybody's lying. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No. I agree. If you look at, we have to, I just, when I studied the public discourse, for instance, in Russia, it's just equally based on lies. I just don't see any kind of better. But I just try to view it. Guys, I'm going to give you an example how I look at 3 parameters when I study a society. Yeah, I usually tell this on every stream for people that wants to get familiar with the broadcast that I have done. So I look at 3 parameters primarily. 1, I look at what kind of is the socioeconomic system of this country or this region where I am. I look at this, and then I look at who is in power. Are they Jays around, in the upper echelons and so on? What kind of lobbying politics they have and so on. And then number 3, I look at ethnic component. This is a very diversified mixed society and so on. So when I look at all of these 3, for instance, attributes, I'm equally sick whether it's in Moscow or if it's in Washington, to be honest with you. Because, and I have studied also the power of, for instance, let's say Israel and for instance, Russia. They have had excellent relationship prior to this. I believe that if we study the oligarchs and so on, the vast majority of them are all Jews and so on. And also you have within the upper echelons of the Russian sphere, you have also, these past Soviet Jews and so on, that are still in power. So I just don't see them as fighting this new world order. I think they are definitely going against what the U.S. has been doing. And don't get me wrong, I do understand that the United States has invested heavily in this conflict since this Orange Revolution and everything that happened afterwards. So don't get me wrong about this. I'm not saying that I am in favor of U.S. expansion. The NATO should just take over Georgia and take over Ukraine and so on. I think I can understand it from one point of view that you don't want any kind of influence from that. But like I have said so many times, it's like when the Soviet Union disintegrated, and all of a sudden the Russians, they did not possess any kind of political power to preserve this. Many countries, they became NATO members, and you have Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania becoming NATO member states, and then the Ukrainians, after the fall of Yanukovych, they thought, wait a minute, why are these countries, turning to NATO? Why cannot we choose our own destiny and so on? So I get both, how to say, situation. I understand it. So, but the way I see it is that I truly don't see any kind of good coming out if, for instance, the Russians, let's put it this way, they would somehow emerge victorious in this. And furthermore, I would say another thing that is also very important. I think it's so stupid that we have a fault line division between 2 peoples that are quite near each other, considering when I see what's happening in my country where I live right now in Sweden, where we are flooded with these migrants from Africa and everywhere constantly. I mean, you guys, I don't know if you ever been here in Sweden. Have you? Okay.
Only
No,
through YouTube and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I'm joking.
Yes, exactly. Okay. No, but if you guys would visit in, for instance, Sweden and I would say Germany too, and the Netherlands and Belgium and France and so on, you guys would be shocked, because we have an enormous influx of these migrants coming from Africa and so on. And this, I believe, will cause enormous turmoil. It already has, but even more. So this is a huge problem. So I understand what you guys are saying as well, that this conflict should somehow, for instance, for me, I see it should be shut down immediately, this conflict. I don't see anything good coming out from this. I mean, I would wish for the Ukrainians to separate themselves from the Russians so they can go their own destiny and so on. But the intensification of this conflict will not benefit us whatsoever.
This is I don't care a lot about this question, but it puzzles me to some extent, because I met some Croatian Jew in Maribor who lives in Maribor, who's lived in Maribor for decades now, and he talked to me about Croatian nationalism and how Franjo Tudjman kidnapped it, for example, that he was a real Croatian nationalist and so forth. What's with some brands of Croatian nationalism are obviously affected by Croatian Jewry. Wouldn't you say so? And when we talk about this, I mean, from my perspective, of course, it was from the couch when you had the war. It was easy to observe and to be smart about it. But for example, it always puzzled me why this guy Franjo Tudjman, his surname is like a foreigner, isn't it?
Yes. His
surname is foreigner.
Tudjman. Exactly. Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to give you my what I have studied now recently is this is also very, very odd, I would say, that all of a sudden Croatia has now many Jews, all of a sudden everywhere, and they are somehow involved in politics and so on. And I believe that due to what happened, due to our past, I say that the current elite, they must do everything they can to just somehow avoid what happened, to being associated what was in the past with the Ustasha regime and so on, because it was, let's say, very critical of the Jewry, 100%, that regime. I'm referring to Ante Pavelić, not to Tudjman's Croatia.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to ask you. Do you think, of course, that there's obviously Serbo-Jewish propaganda about Croatian NDH and Ustaše movement about Jasenovac? There are exaggerations, hyperbole, a lot of lies, and so this is one part of Serbo-Jewish propaganda against Croatia. But would you say that there's also a counterintelligence propaganda coming from the same source, which says about Ustaše movement and NDH that they were basically crypto-Jewish? Would you say that this is a counterintelligence propaganda coming from the same source, or is there any truth to the fact? I know that the Pravaši, which were the predecessors of Ustaše, that they were created at least partly by the Jewish lawyer from Osijek, weren't they?
You got a little bit cut off, so I could not hear everything what you said. But you're asking, but you're asking me basically if this propaganda stems from, let's say, that was pinpointed by Serbs and Jews, what we supposedly did to these people in Jasenovac, that the same producers of this propaganda comes from another source as well, you would say, or from the same powers that be.
If it's coming, if it's coming from the same source that exaggerates, for example, about Jasenovac, that it's the same, it's how they work. Sometimes they try to play the both sides. For example, if you try to if you talk to a Croatian ethno-nationalist, of course you would try to lie to him that if you try to say to him that Ustaše were bad, you would say to him something like, yeah, they were basically crypto-Jewish. This is what I mean. Do you mean that this is the case with this narrative?
Well, it could be. I'm confusing to a certain is involved, and we all know that these people, they have a tendency of supporting both sides in order to gain more power themselves. They have done so throughout history, so I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the case. However, when Croatia wanted to separate itself from Yugoslavia, we saw a really strong attempt from Serbs to pay lip service to Israel and to pinpoint, look, everything what Ustasha did, they genocide us along with you and so on. So you can never. They went to the World of Jewish Congress and kneeled in front of them and told them, please, you have to. We're dealing with these Nazis and so on, and that's so. And then of course, and then from 1991 to 1995, I think Croats did not care about the Jewry and so on whatsoever. But then afterwards became the path of reconciliation. We have to deal with our past, and since then we have had an elite that tries to do everything it possibly can to stay on good terms with Washington and Tel Aviv. Yeah. So, but it could be the case. But I know that this victimology by let's say the Serbs, it has been used so much, and it's embedded, I would say, at least in Serbian nationalism, the way I see it. At least that point, at least let's put it this way, in this notion of a greater Serbia. They use this as a victimology. We were, slaughtered by the Ustashas and by the Catholics and by the Germans and so on. So it's somehow, they see that they share some kind of victimology with the Jewish people. That's the way I've seen. So they have never actually, well, once again, I'm referring to those who want a greater Serbia. Go ahead, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you take into consideration Vojislav Šešelj, for example, he's like a ideological and political brother to Slovene politician, a right wing in Slovenia, and they are basically both pro-Zionists, very pro-Jewish, and for example, Slovene mainstream conservatives or right wingers are extremely pro-Zionist, pro-Jewish, and what bothers me probably the most is that they are extremely pro Kosovo Albanian, pro Shqiptari. Yes. And this is for me, this is a massive
cannot be
evidence.
Well, I don't think the
for me this is a massive evidence. Yeah, but I think that this is for me a massive evidence that Slovene nationalism, at least mainstream nationalism, on which our independence, so-called independence that never came to be, was built, is basically NATO created.
Yes.
The massive evidence pro Shqiptarophilia on mainstream Slovene nationalist is basically a massive evidence that this is a NATO-based nationalism. So
Sure, they want it with this nation. Yeah, it could be. It could be. They would. I think they use that to a certain extent when it comes to the nation building process, like they described it. So yeah. What I wanted to say, I believe, if I'm correct now, if we studied I think this is the radical Serbian party, I think, of Šešelj and so on. I believe that this is the dominant nationalistic fraction in Serbia. Am I correct, or?
Probably, but it is pretty mainstream. I believe it's pretty. Šešelj was a mainstream public figure, has been for 30 years now, probably.
Yes, and he always, I think, if you studied this man and his discourse, he's very anti-Croat. I mean, extremely, and he constantly says that, oh, it's the Croats and the evil Germans and the Catholic Church. They went against and persecuted us poor Serbs along with these Jews and so on. And then all of a sudden he blames everything, Washington, great, and imperialism and stuff like that, uses a typical leftist, let's say, foreign policy discourse that everything what the West is doing, it's naturally due to Washington and Americans and so on. However, when it comes to pinpointing or identifying the real culprits, he will never do so. And guys, who I'm referring to heavily. And so there you have it. And he's also a Sivnat, if I'm correct. He's not an ethno-nationalist in the sense he wants to take. So he's a Sivnat as well. And so there we have that type of pattern. And also what you said in the very beginning, what you said that somehow what Tom Sunich wants, he wants to unite these people. Imagine uniting this fraction, and imagine the fraction that I represent, who are ethno-nationalists against the international Jewry. And I mean, it would never work.
Look at this. In
but
Slovenia,
I do have some.
In Slovenia, the right in Slovenia, let's say the center mainstream right, with Janša as its head and all the satellites of the biggest center-right party, they're also entirely Jewish controlled. He especially after the Donald Trump incident. I don't know if you know, but to this day, Janez Janša still remains the only politician to ever congratulate Donald Trump on an electoral win in 2020. But after a shitstorm in the European media, and I think they grabbed him by the balls, and a monumental shift in his rhetoric occurred. And what do you know? In half a year, he is bowing in front of Ursula, the broad, and in the next year, he appears in a Jewish synagogue. And get this, his party is extremely anti-Serbian. And the observation I want to put forward again here is who's playing both sides here? Who's playing both sides and pitting Slovenians and Serbs against each other? And that's why I understand people like Tom Sunich, whom I know very little about. But still, I get the sentiment that you want to unite these people in a sort of no more brother war spirit to defeat.
No, I agree.
To somehow defeat the international Jewry. But it's naive in the same way that the naivete that guided the pan-Slavism against the European oppression in the 19th century, I think.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point. I just want to say with Sunish, I don't think that he actually has ever identified the culprits. Let's say that there are, let's say, Jewish lobbying and so on. He has very good ties, for instance, with Paul Gottfried, if you guys are familiar with his work. And he is also, I would say, a civnat who sees, let's say, a natural alliance between Israel and kosher nationalists in Europe and so on. So I just don't see Tom Sunish being, let's say, consequential, that he says, look, these are the people, and so on. He said, oh, we need to take care into consideration about the Indo-European people. We have a, shared, we belong to the same cultural sphere. We need to get along quite good and so on. But I just don't. And another thing that is quite interesting is that even though if we would reach out a hand to people like that, we still have these, let's say, other nationalists that are still continuing constantly talking about, identifying, the problem is with this, Washington did this, the Germans did this, the Catholic Church did this to us, and so on. So it's just, I see it as very difficult. However, in the future, like you guys said, we will have to somehow find a way to work together. Otherwise, we will not exist, because we are less than almost 10% of the global population. What is it? 8 billion people on the face of the earth. And if we continue to have internal strives, I think we will be wiped out. So
sure, I think we have to restore some
semblance
of reality first, right?
Yes. We have to expose the two main problems. Sorry to you. We have to expose two main problems towards this goal. The two main problems are normies and fellow white people in our countries. So a normie Serb is the one that believes the stories of the fellow white people, and the fellow white people, fellow Serb people are the ones that dictate these stories through their media, and it is very similar in our country and probably also in Croatia. Although Croatia seems, at least at the surface, a bit more sovereign than us Slovenes and the Serbs. Serbs are practically non-sovereign at all. They basically have normies and fellow Serb people with the small hats, and the so-called radicals that are basically the Jews anyway. The Jews that want to promulgate this hate towards Croats and Catholic Church, for example.
But have you heard this? I spoken to other nationalistic people. For instance, I spoke to some Albanians. I spoke to Macedonians and so on. And I tried to on numerous occasions explaining to them. But still, there are people who would ally themselves directly with the Jews in order to gain some kind of let's say interest or and so on other people's behalf and so on. And this is naturally causing a problem, because it goes against our our wish to unify the Indo-European peoples. And I think this will happen. I think what will force us to ally together will be this next wave of mass migration. And I believe, and I always warn about this, that we will have a Negroid invasion. And I think that this is already happening. Some people are laughing when I explain this now. But when I see these footages in Spain, and when I see in France and in Italy, and we see West Africans coming in, like savages running around, I think this is only the beginning. And I think that if this continues, then we will be definitely forced to leave out this myopic nationalism and come together in order to survive. And I think that this will actually happen. And I think the younger generation will have the toughest challenge in the Western history ever. I think this will be, that's my view. So I do really understand what you guys are saying, that we need to focus on survival and to build networks and have good ties with each other and try to leave it out the best as we possibly can. Because, yeah, it doesn't look so good in Western Europe, to be honest with you, what I have seen. It's just horrifying.
It's great. It's great. Thank you for, because it's in this chaotic, let's say, the news cycle, it's hard to keep track of everything, and people just get lost in sort of movements and and like it's good to get a reality check on some things, for example, Russia and stuff. But shifting the topic a little bit, if you're okay with this, Aleš, speaking of Jewish controlled politicians, and I immediately reveal my opinion here. Giorgia Meloni.
Yeah.
Do you think the picture with when she signed the Israeli flag and then her Green Pass comments make her case just a non-starter, or do you have anything, maybe something more to say on this?
Well, the way I see it is that all of these, let's say, all of these constellation that we have seen so far, we have in Sweden, we had the elections in Sweden, and I'm going to give you the example. We have the second largest party, they are called Sweden Democrats, and in the media they have been portrayed evil Nazis and so on, and they have not a shred of National Socialist.
They make them sound way cooler than they actually are. They make them sound way cooler than they actually are, right?
Yeah, because what happened is, one, they are cultural nationalists, they are civnats. Secondly, they are against the legal, they're against the legal migration. They are for the legal migration, but against the illegal migration, And secondly, they don't have any repatriation on their agenda. And number three, this is the most funny, they try to reach out to the state of Israel. We love you. We want to be with you. And you know what the funny thing is? They are rejected by the Israelis. The Israelis say, no, we don't want anything to do with you. And I think with all of these, Salvini, Meloni, I think every one of them, they will be forced to pledge allegiance to Israel in order to exist as a political entity.
I think it's already clear that their meteoric rise, if I can use such a washed-up term, is already a sign that they have pledged allegiance at least to a European nation, if not to Tel Aviv already.
But there's also another point I would like to emphasize. I saw this, and it really struck me. I saw with Meloni on Meloni's opinion on Green Pass, because this is what many sovereignists said, that it was an evidence that she was ours. She was against the Green Pass, and then you could see her talking against it, and you could see her talking for it.
Yes.
And so it seems like that it's extremely possible that politicians are these bots, and that the small heads are basically making two sorts of movies with them.
Yes.
And then getting them into the public just for the sake of the discourse, making the discourse even more chaotic.
Yes, and it doesn't. Sorry, Marco, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to interject. That's interesting, Aleš, because shortly after the start of the special military operation, it came out. Some leaks came out of internal discussions in Kiev. And what came out is basically that Zelensky was not making any kind of his own decisions when it came to what they did in the face of a Russian ultimatum. He straight up admitted that he asked Washington and London, and he had there was no input of his. I mean, if you compare the behavior of Zelensky to the behavior of every other pro-Israel Zionist, so-called either conservative or liberal politician, and you see the same kind of patterns in international relations and stuff, you have to assume that everyone else is functioning very, very similarly to him, right?
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, absolutely. I think you made a very good point here. I mean, I think the key question is like this. Previously, we have heard that, like, for instance, when all of these nationalistic governments, they're able to, let's say, all of these nationalistic parties are able to form governments, somehow we have viewed it, oh, they're just another controlled opposition and so on. I think, yes, I think both yes and no. I think they are somehow needed there to create more chaos and turmoil, because if we see, the more we see civnats gaining power, we see more, let's say, divisions, we see more problems, and desperately, oh no, we need to take in more migrants as a result for this, you know.
Yeah.
Kaj se zgodilo?
Očitno Rudolfa udba pospravlja. Rudolfa je udba pospravlja.
Groza. A si v stiku z njim?
Aha, evo ga.
I got cut off there. I'm back here.
Rudolf.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
It was probably. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
No, but I mean, we see when these governments are formed, we see even more chaos. Like, for instance, when Trump was able to, you know, build his administration, it was so much turmoil.
Yeah.
And despite the fact nothing really happened, migrants came in, they had this big migrant caravan from Central America. It just continued there. It didn't stop, like, and they said, oh, we're going to start repatriating, we're going to form new federal laws that we will initiate the biggest repatriation ever, and nothing came out of this. So I'm afraid with Meloni and Salvini and all of them, I think they're just, it will create just more turmoil. And I think I'm not sure. Any thoughts? How do you view it, guys? I mean, what's your take on it?
Let me emphasize this thought. It's about Yugoslavia, for example. We were taught that Yugoslavia was a communist country and that the communists wanted to make a Yugoslav nation. And by that, they wanted indigenous nations to get extinguished, for Croats, Slovenes, Serbs not to exist anymore, for example. And that they wanted to motivate people to get married with other ethnicities and so forth, mixed marriages and so forth. And probably there were a lot of them, but if you take into consideration Slovenia after the year 91, after we got independent, after we ran away from communism and became our own country, for 30 years now, we haven't been able to have our own national census. And it's pretty obvious that there are probably not even 50, maybe 60% of Slovenes in our country anymore, and that Kosovo Albanians, Bosniaks are becoming majorities in our country, and we cannot even count ourselves. So this is when we got our own country, we basically got extinguished.
I understand.
And it's an interesting thing is that we were safer in communist Yugoslavia in the sense of survival of our ethnos.
It's a paradox. In your case, it's a paradox. For us, it was a little bit trickier because we had like UDBA, conducting extrajudicial killings like the Mossad did on people that my family knew and so on. So for us, it was a little bit trickier because we were always in a problem when it came to being those that were responsible for everything. But I can understand from the Slovenian perspective, definitely. And now it has gotten completely out of hand. And I think if let's say Hungary and Poland will not be able to stand, let's say, against Brussels and perhaps even Washington in that sense, and they will be forced to take in all these migrants, then we are all in trouble in the entire Balkan. We will just be flooded over immediately, and then so that's something that I think what's good in a sense that I usually tell this to people. I don't mean to be. I love Eastern and Central Europe, a lot. But to be honest with you, the migrants, they don't want to go there. They primarily want to come to Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Germany. And they say, oh, Austria, I want to go to Austria. They want to go where they have welfare benefits and so on. And still, until this day, I believe that the primal reason that they don't want to go to Eastern and Central Europe, because the effects of real socialism, there are no social benefits, there are suppressed salaries in comparison to how it is in the West. So they don't just want to go there, But if the standard increases, well, then. And if the European Union start distributing them, oh my God, well, then we are in a huge trouble. And I think it's a safe haven, now. For instance, when I travel to Croatia now, it's not nearly how it is, for instance, in the Nordic countries, what I see. Not nearly. But I understand you in Slovenia. I did not know that you have so many Kosovo Albanians, to be honest. That I did not know.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is the majority of them came during the reign of the so-called right-wing governments.
That's so bizarre.
And there's always this argument.
Not only that. Every time the center-right party seizes power, there's an insane spike in immigration from everywhere, but especially from Albanians and Kosovars. It's just insane. And they keep peddling this rhetoric that they're gonna stop immigration, that they build some sort of 1 meter tall barbed wire shit that lasts exactly 2 years, and now the left-wing government is removing it for international cookie points. But look, referring to your previous question of what do you make of all these CivNet movements, I think I want to stay optimistic, first of all, because a CivNet movement is a movement that has the ability to mobilize and get boomers to vote and act. Because boomers they're never going to vote for a real nationalist. I think ethno-nationalist is a redundant term, and but I love that you emphasize this. And that's one reason. And the second reason I stay optimistic is I see them as stepping stones, because they look, the Overton window and stuff, it may be some sort of horse shit made up nonsense about what is acceptable to say, but I think it's still useful to use as a framework. And in terms of the Overton window, hey, okay, you in these movements in themselves, they're just as, maybe they're even worse than an open borders liberalism, because they're more insidious, especially with the Slovenian center-right party. But on the other hand, look, with such slogans as God, family, and country as Giorgia Meloni, you've moved the Overton window, and you've let out the genie out of the bottle, and you won't be able to get the toothpaste back in the tube, right?
Yes, no, but that's good. Yeah, the discourse was quite interesting, like you said, the slogan, like, yeah, and
And in a certain sense, I have to say, people like Orban and maybe Salvini or stuff, they deliver in a certain sense. Orban managed
yes,
to invert the negative trend of population growth,
yeah.
and they might have a very good temporary effect on things such as abortion and stuff. So that's another reason to stay optimistic.
But can I ask you, because I wanted to, I have I work with younger men too, and I get a little bit frustrated because I'm a manager. I work within finance, so I have a lot of younger men there, and I get so angry, but I cannot reveal what I think and so on. But when I ask them, who do you look upon? Who are your, and I get this, and I did a video about a guy, Andrew Tate, and his brother. Are you familiar with him, guys?
Yeah. I'll come back in a minute. I just have to go to the toilet.
Okay, Marco, can I ask you? Are you familiar with Mr. Tate and his brother and this lifestyle that they live, and also the political ideology behind these brothers? Can I ask you?
Yeah, familiar enough.
Okay, can you give me your take? Because the way I see it, again, here we have two brownies. Let's say they're chocolatos, they're mixed race. I think mother is white and father is African American, and they started their life, I believe, with martial arts. I think they accomplished some titles. I think Andrew Tate became a world champion, his brother, I don't know. And they started with this webcam service, and then with the casinos, and now they live in Romania, and they live quite extravagant lifestyle with cars and women and so on. But it doesn't stop there. There is also a political agenda behind them, and it's quite simplistic. I'm not depressed whatsoever. It's just that we need to enhance masculinity, and then we need to somehow the man should lead the woman and not the other way around. And they're very anti-Western in the sense that the Western civilization has become feminized and cockified to a certain extent that it's not anymore relevant. Now, they are highly, highly popular. And I view them also as value conservative, perhaps, in the sense. What would your take be on this? Are they very popular among the, let's say, young men in Slovenia and so on? What would you say, if I get your take?
Yeah, I have to say that I've kind of removed myself from the population since I've gotten married, but as far as I can discern or see, yeah, they're the first. I would say they're the first to break the single-mindedness of lefty liberalism.
Yes,
and as such, I'll say this. I don't like them. I think their shit is retarded and stuff, but they're the first to break this, and as such, they do dupe a lot of people. But in my opinion, well, you didn't ask me for my opinion, just ask for a statement of fact. So yeah, they are. They're. I would say that right now they're the only, let's say, they're the only viable alternative in the sense of media. Yeah.
Look, because what worries me when I talk to, I'm going to give you the opinion. Like, for instance, when I have some of these young men, they talk to me about advice and stuff like that, and they always tell me, oh, but it's different for you because you have Croat background, so you can be like this, you can be like that. And I tell them, I get a little bit angry. I try to say to these younger men that, look, what we see here is as a result biracial,
Yeah.
outcomes too, because this civic nationalism, that the only thing that is accepted if you want to utter patriotism is somehow civic nationalism, value conservatism, and kosher nationalism. And for me, I view it as shit. Is this really controlled opposition, or is this the only acceptable, viable alternative? And this frightens me, because I want someone, and I asked, these kids, don't you have a white role model, and who you can look up to and so on? Oh, but they're saying the right thing and so on. Yeah, but I can go to Saudi Arabia and heard popular things about that against, the weakness of our civilization and feminization and cockification. But that doesn't mean that I become a radical Sunni Muslim,
Yeah. No, I think that what gives them away is their constant shitting on European civilization in a way of, look, if they were actually concerned for the state of affairs here, they'd be saying this with a kind of nostalgic sadness, but they're not. They're just saying like everything is shit. Just move to, I don't know, Borneo and have 5 meters, 40 centimeters, 140 centimeter women.
Andrew Tate actually says right now that he'll probably move to Croatia because it's so great.
Yeah, about
beautiful women. It's safe.
But will he respect the decision
with Andrew Tate is?
Will he respect the decision of Croats to reject him in the spirit of true patriotism or whatever?
No,
I think just one last comment on this topic from me. I don't know if you just forgot to mention this, Rudolf, or if you actually don't know, but his father was in the CIA and he's very open about it.
Oh, I did not. I thought he was a non-significant chess player and so on. He did. I did not know that.
He was a GM.
No,
he was a GM. Andrew says he has an IQ of 160,
chess for the army.
Well, you never know with Tate because he's so childish. He's like a retard. He can go and say like his father was Superman. It's so, it gets to a certain point. But guys, do you understand why I'm linking these two brothers with these shitty, with the kosher nationalists? Because it's the only viable, acceptable political alternative. And if people would ask me, oh, well, what would the viable alternative be with you? Well, definitely, I would say quite strong, robust, militant, I don't want to say it wrong, but I would like to see a militant white nationalist movement. That would be my ideal situation. But, it's if you say this, you will be classified as a complete moron. Yeah.
No, can I just say on a more serious note?
I mean,
I know
if I may.
Okay, go ahead, Alesh. Go ahead.
No problem. You just go
ahead.
On.
Okay,
I'll
look.
Express my opinion
on
later.
A more serious note, right? They are retards, but I also think in a more, let's say, immediate time frame or close time frame, they're causing tremendous damage. Okay, because they're propping all these young men to go and try do stuff that just by laws of statistics 99.9% of them are never going to achieve, and when they don't, they're gonna feel totally shit and depressed. I sincerely believe that when it comes to success in life and relationships with women, it's just so I think it's creating a delusion in men. And they're actually, look, as lefty as this sounds, they're actually creating incels, which is bad, because I want young European, not only Slovenian, but European, I want them to be happy. But you have to realize, for 99.9% of men, the only feasible thing is a faithful monogamy that will make you happy if you want to have a relationship with women.
Yes, that's very I agree what you said, Marco. That's the brilliant, like you said, because like you said, paradoxically, the Tate brothers, they're parasites because they are actually profiting from these incels, that are in a horrible situation. And I think they're only exploiting them, even more and more because they're profiting from them. Now, however, what I wanted to ask you, and this is very important, a little bit what worries me is that, for instance, if it will come down to, let's say, that our civilization will decline and we will enter a decay with, let's say, low intense conflicts and so on, will it only be acceptable to be a civnat? Is this the only thing that is left of the resistance? Because then I see it somehow, I would say that this was somehow indirectly control opposition one way or another, because then the only thing that remains left, it's perfectly fine to, we don't need to think about race, it's not important whatsoever, we just need to focus on culture and being a man and being masculine. Well, sorry guys, I don't think that is sufficient, because if that is sufficient, then you can all convert to Islam.
Yeah, that's we don't have to worry about race. Okay, that's what a ruthless cosmopolitan would say.
Exactly. But they will not succeed.
Yeah.
But someone who is a little bit more talking about going against the SJWs, going against critical race theory and so on, but still remaining, a civnat, then somehow it becomes acceptable, because I see these kids, for instance, one kid, this is a true story, I'm going to explain to you. You have to hear this story. Two of my co-workers, they're like 21 years old. They went out and they partied and they got beaten up severely by blacks, beating up severely, and then when this guy who was subjected to this violence, he asked me, Rudolf, who do you think I should cast a vote on, the liberal centric party, or do you think I should cast and I told him, if I would in your shoes, I would cast a vote on the biggest fascist party there ever is. I mean, you were subjected to it and you understand what's going on, and still you have some questions asking me, what do you think I should vote on? It's so crazy.
Exactly. You know what I said at the beginning of the stream? I said to Alex, some call it brainwashing, but I prefer to call it mental castration.
Yeah,
it's just the total inability to have a connection with reality. No, but you ask if we descend into this chaotic late empire stage, to the last empire stage, let's say to the 400s or something. Will civic nationalism still be the only thing that's acceptable? I'm a firm believer in natural law, and when things get to this, I think nationalism is the only thing that's actually is the only thing that's compatible with natural law. So when we succumb to the primal urges or whatever you want to call this, I think nationalism and also all this ideological house of cards is just going to collapse like this, I think.
True.
Snap of the fingers, including feminism and liberalism and all this effing shit, man.
That's very good. So in case
I would like to add something important about Tates. They are parasites, in my opinion, but not in the sense that they are using these lads that are entering their hustlers university. They might even get something from that. In my opinion, they are parasites in the sense that in one sense, and on one side, and on the other side, they go into communities they cherish, they have respect for because of their traditional bondages. That they respect, for example, Islamic communities. They respect Romania and orthodoxy, and they respect.
Yeah, sure. It's the value
Croatia.
concept. I understand.
They respect the tradition on what, and they don't understand that they are the parasites, similar to the parasites that are ruining our societies. They have respect for. This is why, and this is the sense.
But here you have again,
for example.
So sorry, Alish, but you just wanted to. Here you have again.
Yeah.
You know, they're perfectly products of multiracialism. Obviously, you have a mother white and a black father, and the offsprings Andrew and Tristan, and they have, I think, one sister too. I don't know, but okay. Furthermore, they have succeeded in a hyper-capitalist setting. The system was perfect for them, so they could thrive in it, and they are still capitalizing on this with what you said with this university. And thirdly, they would never, ever utter anything about who are the real culprits in world politics. Never. It's just, it's the Matrix, or we are suppressed by the gynocentric society. But well, who are behind, let's say, cultural Bolshevism and so on? Who are these people really? Are they Gentiles, or is it all a coincidence?
Yeah, and you can see who are his friends. He's friends with Alex Jones and Paul Joseph Watson.
Yes,
these are all. It's only a matter of time when he comes to Daily Wire to be a guest of Ben Shapiro and Dinesh D'Souza and Steven Crowder and the likes. Yeah, he's basically a promoter of Trumpism or something like that, and nothing else.
I'll do you one better. He won't be a guest. He will be just like Peterson, and he'll get his own show.
Yes.
Should we make a bet? No.
Another brand of individualism.
No, but guys, how do you see if this continues? Because I'm a little bit worried now when I see the trajectory here. For instance, I see in Sweden, I don't know how it is in. I was actually now on a business trip to Poland. It was very ethnic, homogeneous, I must say, in comparison to Sweden, 100%. However, what I see here in Sweden is mixed marriages a lot. Not only in the past, they have maybe some flirtations with these migrants, but now I actually see more and more Swedish women entering in a relationship with blacks and browns from the Middle East and so on. What are your thoughts? Do you think that this will somehow lead to some kind of reaction, that we will see some kind of reinvigoration of ethnic nationalism? Or do you think, guys, that we will go through, at least in Western Europe, to a more acceptance of, let's say, civic nationalism, like the only way to oppose this, corrupt world order and so on? What are your thoughts on this?
Considering how these ethnic minorities have developed in the UK, I think that the first option is more likely, because it's become obvious that they don't integrate, they don't create a hybrid culture like it has happened in the US in some places, or some sort of mutt population. They just stick together and create these unlivable, untouchable ghettos. And because I think, ironically, the fact that this immigration is so concentrated and not just like stretched out through a period of like 60 years as it was in the US, it's actually a positive thing for us. What does this mean? They stick together. Yeah. And you know what? When you have something that you want to remove and it sticks together, it's easier to remove in a more homogeneous way, right? This is the thing that Vox Day pointed out, because the Americans in their despair, they've started to project this despair on Europe. And every time the migrant crisis reinvigorates in the news cycle, they're saying stuff like Europe is lost, Paris is lost, and it's exactly the opposite is true. The more that this is concentrated and targeted, the more it's actually reversible, because the more the process is controlled and not, let's say, diversified, the more you can actually reverse it, right? And Vox, they pointed this out. Europe is not lost. All the immigrants are in the metropolis and the big cities. So it's actually, let's call it them nicely, repatriations are a real possibility. What's actually lost is a majority chunk of the American land for the WASPs that are the real Americans. That's what's actually lost.
Yes, elite. They had a hostile elite that took over the power. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, this mixed marriages, I think, is just going to accentuate the problem, the obvious problem with, let's say, a different lifestyle that these cultures have, right? If you know the channel History Debunked, it's a 150-year-old Englishman that talks about these issues very calmly and relaxedly. He says it's look, guys, in the spirit of cultural relativism, there are cultural differences, and for the interest of both parties, it's better if you part ways. And as we are the resident party in these ends, I suggest that actually you move the F out. So that's my opinion about that.
Yeah. No, but it's good. We need to, and I think I'm a little bit, pessimistic the way I see it in Sweden, because Sweden is a little bit special, in comparison to other countries. Firstly, the country has not been in a war for over 200 years. And also we have the biggest divorcee rates per capita than any other country. So it's not uncommon that you have these single mother households, and they're raised by their feminist social democratic mothers and so on. So, and that naturally, not forces, but it somehow indoctrinates the kids to think that they have to be egalitarian in a sense and just be very super welcoming to the ethnic stranger. And I think this is highly dangerous culture or milieu if you plant this in a child's head. And this worries me a lot. So the way I've seen it so far, but like you said, mostly in the metropolitan areas, although I have to say it, in Sweden we have them on the countryside too, so there's nowhere to run here.
The spillover is inevitable, right? It's the same in Slovenia with the Balkan immigration, especially with the Kosovars and such. The Ljubljana has been filled up, kind of. It's turning into a shithole.
I did not know that. I always wanted to. I've been to Ljubljana and so on, but it was a long time ago. But I did not know that you had that large portion of Kosovo Albanians. I mean,
a statistician, actually. Proceduralna Generacija is a Twitter handle I like to follow, and Aleš also. He asked us, a statistician that created the analytical model for tracking COVID-19. So let's say he's a decently competent statistician. He extrapolated from past from past censi, he extrapolated what the percentage of Slovenians in Slovenia could be, and he came to a number something in the ballpark of 80%, which I think it's discouraging, to be sure, but not unexpected. It's the last census, I think, gave us something like the 88%. But the decline is steep, right?
Yeah.
And I don't, in the interest of not being respectful here, look, it's Balkan immigration, okay, but it's just like any immigration. You can't just introduce a foreign bloc and expect things to turn out fine. And we have problems already with certain towns, how to say, towns, because they're really small cities, like Kran, for example, where all the schools are already bilingual. Let's say. Yeah, it's finally creating some tensions. People are unhappy to a certain extent. Oh, look at that.
Rudolf.
Yeah.
About our running Shqiptarophilia and so forth, and bringing all the Kosovo Albanians into Slovenia practically during their reign. Would you? This is a bit of a joke on our ex prime minister and the head of the right center party, the biggest right center party, Janez Janša. Would you say that this is a phenotype of an average Slovene?
No.
No, the running conspiracy theory among sovereigns in Slovenia that he's a Kosovar. So
yeah, I just don't understand why you got this large portion of them. I just don't. I mean,
it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. We are, in a certain sense, we are. Let's say, if first of all we are a vassal state of Germany, and second of all we are we get a bit of the economic benefit from being neighbors to Austria. Also, we have a lot more Germanic genes, which amount to a more, let's say, a more productive culture. I've never been a fan of using these terms, but actually, we straight up have more money and a better living standard. That's all.
Yes, that I know. Yeah, that I know.
That's the reason.
And tell me, how do you? Because the way I view it, that we had these Kosovo Albanians here in Sweden and so on, and they're very difficult to integrate. They have this clan structure. They have some kind of a allegiance towards each other and so on. They're difficult to integrate. They're, on the contrary, they cause a lot of problems when it comes to crime rates and crime syndicates and so on. Is this the same pattern in Slovenia with them, or?
Look, I think we're not ready to admit it yet in public discourse, but the problems are becoming pretty apparent, right?
Because there are some nationalists, they see that Shqiptar as national allies. I don't understand that too. Have you heard about it?
I mean, we can become allies when they stop.
Me neither.
When they stop exporting them.
No, but I just don't see them as resonating, because I've seen them. They're in Germany. They're in everywhere and so on, and then they tend to group themselves with other anti-racists and so on, and often become very critical. For instance, if an Albanian guy would find out someone, casted a vote to the Swedish Democrats, which according to me is just another Sivnat joke, or they would become very, they're racist and stuff like that. So they're very, I just don't see them as so patriotic beyond their own self-limitation. What would you say? I mean,
they are like low IQ Jews. They're very tribalistic. They work hard, but they work hard for themselves and their families. They are non-integratable and non-assimilable. I mean, just because you hate Serbs, you cannot love Kosovo Albanians.
No,
come on,
no,
guys.
And I look. And I agree with that. I think it's also we have also divisions within Croat nationalists. Some Croat nationalists, they would argue that Bosniaks are fantastic allies, and I just don't see that either, to be honest with you. I think and also I think we should mainly focus, because we have seen, like you have said, when it comes to integration. I've seen this pattern in Macedonia. I've seen this pattern everywhere. In Greece as well, it's difficult to integrate Albanians, I heard. So, I mean, sorry, I got a question now. Did Kosovo immigrants in Slovenia here, like Bosniaks in Croatia? I don't understand. In Croatia, Bosniaks, we took a large portion of them over during the war in the 1990s, and they're not thankful whatsoever. They just still there. Some of them are just equally spitting on Croats like they are on Serbs. It's my opinion.
Yeah, we don't like chauvinism. We are from multicultural. We come from multicultural cities. Sarajevo was multicultural. I remember that there was some Bosniak girl that studied at FDV, whatever that is, a university where you study journalism in Ljubljana or something like that. And she told me basically she doesn't like Ljubljana, although she's been living in Ljubljana now for 10 years. Very privileged, and now probably getting a job at national TV. And she told me she didn't love Ljubljana because she likes multiculturalism. She likes Jamia there, a church there, and you just don't get it in Ljubljana. Although you get it now because we have a great Jamia now in Ljubljana.
Well, why do you have? You don't have any Why do you have a Jamia? You don't have any kind of, Muslims living there in a longer period, like for instance, Sanjak or in Kosovo and so on. I don't understand. It worries me. And Slovenia,
it's bizarre.
How many inhabitants Slovenia?
Now 2.1 million. 2.1 million. And probably millions.
And then you had to have a Jamia there. That's so appalling. Sorry, it's just totally not necessary.
You said
and Slovenian, the mayor of Ljubljana is supposedly a Serb called Jankovic, but Janko is not a Serbian name. So this Serbian guy probably comes from Poland or something like that. His family name was probably Jankowicz.
With the small hat on, like you say.
And he's called by the Slovene right wingers. He's called as a Serb. So many Serbs are taking over our country. We have Serbian mayors in Ljubljana and in Maribor. Maribor mayor's name is Arsenovic, which is also not a typical Serbian name. It just ends with ich, and the retards, the boomer retards, mean that they are Serbs, and it's just bizarre, And Bosniaks, and about Bosniaks, weren't they like the most secular ethnicity in ex-Yugoslavia?
Yes. Yes, they. What happened was like this: is that the Bosniaks, they were very secularized, and they were the most loyal to Titoist Yugoslavia because they had a codified identity at that point on. Now, when Tito died, and afterwards, when Yugoslavia disintegrated, obviously Croats and Serbs, we had our identities. We wanted to just emerge with our countries and so on. So we wanted to split Bosnia into half and so on. And these Muslims that were secularized in the past, well, all of a sudden they had to transform and become more open to Islam and embracing Sunni Islam and so on, Wahhabism and stuff like that. And that went terribly wrong, I would say, in that sense. So they are a hybrid, I would say. On the one hand, you have those exiles, Bosniaks and so on, that are very modern, very liberal in the sense, anti-racist too. I have to tell you about them every time I meet them and so on. They're anti-racist and pro. They want to bring in all those migrants. Come on, bring them in over. Or they are radical Sunni, resorting to Wahhabism. So that you have it. Yeah. So so I would say we had our identities, but they didn't. And especially after the fall of real socialism, they kind of lost it, and they did not know where to orient themselves. So yeah, and they wanted to have a distinct nationality, which is totally fictitious, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and those that didn't get Qatar money, another Udba. Those that didn't get Qatar money, those Boshniks that didn't get Qatar money, are all the same. They are just. We should all just love each other.
I got cut off again. It's those with the little hats that kick me out.
Dude, you should totally come back and completely repudiate. You should come back and totally repudiate the whole stream and say, "I love the state of Israel." Do that next time, please.
Yes, I will do so. No, but I think you're spot on with them, and yeah, well, we see this pattern too. Now I got well, that is what this guy is saying is also, I heard that narrative. I heard that narrative too, that there are Bogomils who accepted Sunni Islam during the 16th century. There could be, and if you study the Serbian narrative, they would say, oh, they were actually Serbs who adopted Islam during the 16th century and so on. So it's we have both made these kind of claims on these people. I would say, I think we have to accept them now that they have a distinct nationality. According to me, they prospered much more during Yugoslavia than they ever will now. That's basically my opinion on this. No, but I think, and somehow I have to be honest, I view them as Europeans, even though that they have another religious trait than I have. So they're not that difficult to integrate in comparison to their, I would say, religious cousins from Pakistan or Afghanistan.
This is an interesting commentary. People of Bosnia and whom are special. They were part of Croatian monarchy. Later, Hungarian. They had their own church of Bosnia. That's really special. I don't know about that. Do you know anything about that?
No, I mean, the way I see it with the Bogomils, I have read a little bit about that too, and so on. And then you have claims and narratives coming from both corners, both from Croats and Serbs, who claims that they are ethnically, but they're attached to us and so on. But it's like a controversy. I'm not that. For me, it's only important to Herzegovina. For me, it's. And those are the worst affected, I would say now. I think,
For me, this is a really important question. How do you define? Because we are always asked. Okay, we are not asked. We're trying to tell people that it is important to define what a member of an ethnicity is, but we get shouted at when we say that. I get shouted at when I explicitly say that I'm not quite sure how many generations behind you have to have your predecessors' graves on this territory. For example, 10, 5. I don't know. I'm not sure. No. But I'm trying to say to people that although it's not, we don't have any consensus, and although we have to come to the consensus, so it will be at least partly social construct, we do have to have this social construct of what is a member of a nation.
Well, would you accept Tates as white?
Yeah, but of course, no Tates, although they don't look black. A Tristan looks like a British guy, and the Andrew looks like a Jew or an Arab or something like that.
Yes, something like that.
Oof.
A Semite of some sort. I wouldn't say they are white. Oh, Udba edit again.
Yep.
We pray to Israel and its success. We are proud members of the vast international community that would love for Israel to exist till eternity. So please stop messing with our stream. We just had a prayer for Israel, Rudolf. So
we played allegiance to that tiny state. Yeah, so now everything is fine. No, but I think, we I just read it now as a crime is not back. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we need to, like you said, it's depending on how long we should go back and study our genealogy and what is, well, it's a little bit difficult to say. I mean, well, for me, it's very important, that we are, I mean, you can obviously see it, maybe not that good on Tate's brother. I would say he would somehow pass as a white individual, I would say. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this, guys? I mean, generation-wise, how long should we go back and so on? So I get your take on it. A few generations. I mean,
well,
I was just
at least a few generations.
Yeah,
and we have to include. Go on, Marco.
There's a bit of a problem with the delay, but I was just thinking about this. I think that something of a generation-like concept has to be established. Just like there's a established concept that a generation is 25 years. I think there should be something akin to a nation, like a broader time frame for a generation in terms of a genetic makeup of a nation, and it should be based on some pattern that we can discern from studying this the haplogroups. I know I've been critical of this haplogroup studying in the past, but I can see its use now for exactly that, for establishing a framework or a frame of reference for nationalism in this sense, right?
Of course. No, but I think we need some.
For example, some people say that it's half of Slovenia. Some people say that third of Slovenia is R1A, and 1/4 of Slovenia is R1B, and so forth and so forth. It's obvious that we are not monolithic in the haplogroup sense, but this is only a part of a complex notion, which is nationality. And all I'm saying is that we have to come to some consensus, or at least have discussions about what constitutes a Slovene, for example, and in your case, what constitutes a Croat, and so forth and so forth.
But we need some kind of criteria, and I agree, because now everything is, you can be a Pakistani if you learn the language and somehow, you adopt to certain customs, then perfectly fine. This individual is a Swede and so on. It's ludicrous what happened now, in Sweden. So yeah, so I understand. I agree on this sense. I think you made a very good point. no, but I think it's very interesting, guys, to be on your show. I really want to do this, you know, again and break in to have you on my show too, definitely, because I want to get in touch with you and get 100%. This was a really blast being here with you, and I want to get to know more about you and how you cope with all of these issues and so on, because I really thought that Slovenia was not that you know, affected by these types of policies, but now I'm a little bit surprised. And how, if I ask you, how is it any intermixture between, let's say, Albanian men and Slovenian women, if I get your take?
Not many, although I have a friend that has a daughter with Kosovo Albanian, but this is an extreme. This is an extreme. But if you go to a Slovene normie, he would probably say, I'd have nothing against it if he was a good guy, or if she was a good girl, or something like that. But
how many times did we not hear this? Yeah, guys. How many times don't we hear that? Oh, if that individual is a good person.
Yeah, if Andrew Tate is a good individual, of course he should breed with Slovenes and make autos all over the place, of course. But I don't know. The mainstream conservative party in Slovenia is they have a theory that Albanian people are some the same as Slovene people. We all had problems with Serbs in ex-Yugoslavia. We were victims of Serbs in ex-Yugoslavia, and we are all hardworking people. Albanians are hardworking people. Slovenes are hardworking. This is really a theory of mainstream conservative party. When you talk to their members, they are insane. They are morons.
Yeah. Well, guys, would you?
Although it might be. Yeah.
I want to get you on my show. I want to do one with you each, or I can have you both together. It would be perfectly fine, because I want to, you know, get your take on, especially this issue is very important, but also the stuff that we talked about, the geopolitics, and also how I understand those talking points that, oh, you know, we all had the same enemy, so therefore we should ally together. No, it's not like that. I think that, for instance, we were pushed into a confederation with the Bosniaks and so on, and it was pushed by Bill Clinton, for instance. It was not a natural alliance. We had, you know, wars with Bosniaks too in the very beginning of the war. So yeah. So
Marco, if I may say, Marco is also an interesting co-correspondent about the states of affairs in the church, because he comes from the traditional Catholic circles, which are very critical towards the mainstream or modernistic Catholic Church, for example. You could also talk about that if you're interested in this topic.
Of course, I'm interested in hearing that, Marco. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean right now? I mean, I don't want to open a whole other Pandora's box here, because
no, but just to get your take on a little bit on this, because it's quite interesting too, the role of the, let's say, Catholic Church and so on. I see it as another universal. For me, the way I see it, even though, let's say, for the Croat people, it's very compartmentalized. You know, it's part of their identity and so on. But if you look at the broader image, when it comes to Catholicism, it's super universal. It's just as Islam and so on. They're projecting themselves, their power a lot in the third world and so on. So it has become cosmopolitan in a sense too. What would your take be in your circle, just so get your point?
For me, it's a look, the situation in so far as the situation in the church goes, it's infinitely complex. It's a world in itself. It's a society in itself. But when it's really, I have to be careful here, because this when a Catholic speaks about the church, is always, you have to be, look, an exorcist, a traditional exorcist and a priest said that in theology precision is everything. So I might abandon the rash rhetoric here for a moment and say that there is a movement within the church that has internalized a departure from traditional Christian teaching. And what you see politically, the political influence that the church wields today is used in an abnormal way in reference to the rest of history. This you must understand if you want to have an impartial view of the church as a historical institution also. Because in my opinion, the church in its totality has brought a positive influence for, let's say, for a realistic European nationalism, right?
Yes.
And my theory is, just shortly, is this: from a Catholic perspective, I like to call myself a 12th century moderate, well, because as a good traditional Catholic, and it's my family heritage, I'm a Thomist in a philosophical sense. And Thomism is really purports itself to be a common sense philosophy and something that keeps in touch with reality, and it's also begot a philosophical movement of Christian realism. And from that perspective, I would say that nationalism, I think it's from my perspective, I love that nationalism made a revival, but I want a step forward. I want a step forward to a full realization of a principle of subsidiarity, right? And I think that a lot of the problems, principle of subsidiarity, meaning that you should try, in the simplest terms, to put it for moderns such as us, is to say that you should never try to impose a higher. You should respect the lower tiers of identities to take precedence in front of the higher tiers of identities. For example, and this all ties into this idea also that nationalism is better than globalism. But someone would say, and that's just my opinion, but someone would say that localism is also better than nationalism, right? And somewhere in me, there's a Catholic that says this is the way forward, right? The way forward, and I also think it resolved some of the problems of 19th century nationalism that was very culturally based, and I think it allows for a lesser need of a genetic component, not genetic component, but studying genetic material or genealogy. Because it allows for natural transitions between regions, right? And this might sound like a multiculturalism, but it's actually not. I want to say that that's my theory. I wanted to put forth my theory as a Catholic, but as it goes for the church today and its relationship, the official church and its relationship with nationalism, you have to understand fundamentally that the political structures of the church have been totally compromised. The political structure, mind you. and they're completely in leftist hands. The ongoing Synod of Synodality, which is a kind of, it is like councils are a way of figuring out the way forward for the church. This Synod of Synodality is trying to be a fake council, and some stupid activists who don't understand the nature of the church at all are trying to steer it in this woke NGO, big NGO, and that's what you see from the church when you see people like Pope Francis talking this frankly crap about immigration and all this. Also, with Pope Francis, you have to understand that he has absolutely zero understanding about the state of and the European history and culture and how we view each other and how we view immigration. All this, he has zero concept of that. You have to understand that. He's not a very educated man.
No, it's not. No, it's not a good representation. I agree here too. And he sounds like a Marxist more, And I get your point 100%. I think it was super interesting on that topic too. Guys, no, really, I want to have your contact details and so on, and I want to invite you to my show. I think this was super enjoyable. I really liked it. If people are tuning in, please check my channel. You can find it on Rudolfom Barešičem, quite easy and so on. I'm sadly shadow banned, even though I try to be very careful what I express and so on. But nevertheless, so I will try to maybe focus on somewhere else, on Rumble or something like that. I don't know if that will help, but nevertheless, it was really good being on. I have to go to bed now, guys. It's been really a blast, but I'm really looking forward to doing this again. Thank you once again for inviting me. 100%, this was cool.
Thank you, Rudolf. Thank you, Rudolf. Have a nice sleep, and thank you
Marco,
for accepting my invitation.
Yes,
I'll connect you to Marco so you can have his contact too. Or
and I have you both on, and we have lots of talk about and so on. I want to focus next time. I want to focus with you guys a little bit also what you see, what's going on in Western Europe and so on. And I have lots of news about Sweden and so on. So I think that would be very interesting. I also want to get your take on other nationalistic groups and so on, but that we can take it. We discussed very much. Okay, guys, once again, thank you. Take care now. Okay, bye.
Okay.
Thanks a bunch. Have a great one.
Have a good night. And thanks to all the viewers and commentators. Thank you, Marco, for accepting my invitation in such a short notice. And let us all have a pleasant night and a pleasant sleep, and God help us all.